This is the last sight that any 3D printing owner ever wants to see. You've spent countless hours on your print, not to mention the filament that you've used to print it, all to have it ruined by the invisible enemy that is moisture. For the longest time, I thought I was doing enough to protect my prints by printing an AMS light enclosure and putting some desiccant in there. But the truth is, if you're serious about this hobby, you do need to invest in a filament dryer so that you can get high quality prints no matter what material you're using. So I went out and bought the Chitu Systems E1 filament dryer with my own money to answer the question, can this be more than a filament dryer, and can it also give us a modular filament storage solution? Now this video is completely unsponsored and they've had zero input into the video, but I should disclose that I do have a relationship with Chitu Systems and they have sent me their Conjure filament in the past. I will have a longer disclosure at the end of the video because that's often not done well, but it's boring. For now, let's unbox this thing and talk about the good, the bad, the weird, and we'll do some extensive decibel testing because people wanted to know that, and there's no good review that I've seen that covers how loud this thing is. First impressions were very good. I unboxed it, plugged it in, and it's exactly what I expected. Very small, which is a huge selling point, and you can plug it in and you're good to go. One thing here is that it comes in Chinese, and so I did record myself changing the language to English. So this is where you click settings, language, how to change it into English, and then how to confirm the changes. And while we're talking about the good about the filament dryer, let's just say that it dries filament really well. I have printed some very hygroscopic materials with absolutely no issues, like this wood PLA. This came out really nicely, had almost no stringing, absolutely no problems. And there are times where an undried filament has caused issues, like this. Look how horrible these bubbles are inside there. That's partly moisture. And then look at the night and day difference after I dry it. So the print doesn't fail. The walls are just perfectly smooth. It's so clear that you can even see through these windows and see what filament is inside. I am going to be dropping this design very soon. Subscribe to stay tuned. But just look at the before and after. Before drying, after drying. And this before drying is actually massively cleaned up. I'll put on screen what this looked like off the build plate. Like the inside looked absolutely horrendous because of all the stringing. This was so much worse. So the difference it makes is more dramatic than it looks like here. Hey, it's Moby here from slightly in the future. So after I recorded this, I remembered a really important other way to validate just how good this thing is at drying. So when you start your first drying cycle, you can watch the relative humidity in the box and it will drop really quickly. Now initially that's kind of fake, so as the air heats up, so does the air's capacity to carry water and humidity. That's kind of the whole way that dryers work. The air gets more, it's like a sponge that gets thirstier, it gets a bigger capacity to carry water, and so that itself pulls water out of the filament, and then that air, some of it gets vented out. So if you see the relative humidity drop initially, that's just because the air is getting hotter. But the way you know that this is a great dryer is that after the drying cycle finishes and you've closed the vents and it's cooled down to ambient temperature, the humidity inside it and inside the air is well below ambient. So it's very humid where I live. It hovers between 30 and 60% relative humidity. After a drying cycle, just with the 4 tiny desiccant packets that are in there by default, the humidity inside there will go well below 20, and I've seen it 10. So another piece of evidence that it's very good at drying. I touched on this, but another great point is that it's tiny. It is just as big as it needs to be. I've seen some filament dryers from other brands that take up so much space and it makes it hard to fit them in. 3D printing already uses up so much space because of the filament and the printers and the prints and storage boxes and stuff. It really is a huge selling point for me that this is just as big as it needs to be. The killer feature, which is the reason I bought this and the reason that I think a lot of people look at it, is that it is modular, and it certainly is. So the design is square and kind of utilitarian, but I don't mind it. It looks nice to me. These are really nice dry boxes. They're modular so that you can use them with the filament dryer. You can see inside them really clearly. You can print from them, you can stack them. They're very sturdy, so I imagine you can stack them quite high, and you can buy them separately, much cheaper than the filament dryer. So I would say it's worth at least considering this just for the modularity, because it is so useful. Another small positive is that it's so small that these dry boxes that are modular, they fit onto the build plate of a standard printer like a Bambu Lab A1. That's all I'm going to say. I've given it away already, but stay tuned if you want to see my journey on how I've done the thing that I might have done that I'm not going to say, and to be notified when I launch it so you can download it and print it for yourself. It's also incredibly helpful that the two halves of the dryer are independent, so you can dry PETG in one side and PLA in the other. And I've tested that and it works with no issues. It's also really nice to be able to print directly from this box. So it comes with these PTFE tubes. You can put them in like some holes, and that allows you to print directly from this. Really handy if you're printing directly with really hygroscopic materials. But there are some quirks to this, and we will get to them later in the video. Another great thing is the price. It is priced incredibly competitively, especially compared to other dryers. I also bought this myself during an Amazon Prime Day where it was significantly discounted, and then I saw it again at the same discounted price. So I will say that it seems to go on sale relatively frequently in the time that I have been watching it, so keep an eye on that as well. But even at the full price, if I'm being completely honest, I think it is priced really well, and so are the expansion boxes, unless you want like tons of them. So what did I not like about this? Well, a small thing is that it doesn't spin your filament while it dries it. I've seen lots of other higher end filament dryers do this. I don't think this is a problem, because even if you're spinning the roll of filament while you're drying, you're still mostly drying the outside edge. And what Chitu would say to counter that is that they circulate the air. And the design is kind of clever. So there are two ports at the bottom of the modular box. One of them shoots air in and the other one sucks it out. And they call this 360 air circulation or something. So they try and get around this by moving the air very well. And I don't think this is an issue at all for drying filament, because it seems to dry filament very well, as we've seen. Where this is a slightly more annoying thing is where I'm trying to dry silica beads in the dryer. So if it was rotating it, then you could fill like a spool-shaped thing with silica beads, rotate it very slowly as you dry it, and I think that would dry silica beads very well. But when I've dried silica beads in there, it ends up only drying the bits that are on the outside, and I have to manually turn it a couple of times or put it in for a couple of rounds. But if you're mostly using this for filament, which is what most people are going to be doing because you can put silica in the microwave, I don't think this is an issue. A bigger issue is the friction that's required to pull filament if you want to print from these dry boxes. So the first thing I tried to print with this was a very soft 85A TPU. And the friction, especially if you have a PTFE tube as well, it's so much that the printer can't pull the TPU out hard enough. Maybe that's my bad for having super soft TPU. Maybe there are ways around that. Let me know what you think down below. But I wasn't able to print TPU from this. If I was going to do it again, I think there are clever ways around it. Like maybe I could roll the filament myself so there's lots of slack inside so that the printer doesn't have to move the spool. But yeah, it's not as simple as it seems. Now later, I was able to print with this using PETG carbon fiber because it's not compatible with the AMS Lite. This printed much more successfully. So because the filament is obviously much more rigid, it can pull it out and that friction isn't a huge problem. But the first long print that I did with PETG carbon fiber from this dry box, overnight, like when it was 85% of the way through roughly, it started air printing the rest and the printer thought it succeeded, but I hadn't. I have a video about this and how I used AI to salvage the print. But I do wonder if that failure could have been due to this friction. So this happened because the filament stopped being pulled through, but it was still like in the tool head in a place where the printer thinks there's filament. And so that's why it air prints. So I wonder if this could have been exacerbated by this friction. But it's also very possible that it was heat creep with a difficult to print material. And also, I'm not sure how many people are printing from their dry boxes, but if that's like a key thing for you, just bear this in mind. There is a little bit of friction when you're pulling out filament. And also, to be completely fair to them, I haven't compared this with other filament dryers, so maybe it's part of the course that there will always be a little bit of friction if you're going to be pulling filament out of a dry box. There is one last negative about this, which everyone will encounter, and that is the touch screen. It's rubbish. It's the kind of touch screen that existed before like modern smartphones, before capacitive touch. You have to like press it quite hard. You have to use your nail sometimes, and it does make it a little bit annoying every time you want to use this. And I hope they fix this in a future iteration or with like a upgrade that you can make to the printer. Now, luckily the UI is set out nicely enough that you can start like almost every filament drying job very quickly with very few presses. So for example, you can either start each chamber independently, or you can make presets where you say, okay, preset 1, this is going to be TPU and this is going to be PLA. And so you can start preset 1 very quickly, but the touchscreen is bad. So we've done the good and the bad. Let's talk about the weird before we dive into my probably too extensive decibel level testing. Two weird things. Firstly, the default settings are really weird. So if you say, oh, I want the setting for PLA, by default, it's like incredibly conservative. So the temperature is lower than you'd expect and the length of time is lower than you'd expect. I wonder if this is because of the automatic drying feature. So there is a feature where you can say, oh, if the moisture goes above a certain amount, automatically start drying again. So maybe they have these really low settings so that if you're doing repeated cycles of drying, it doesn't over dry the filament. That's only my theory. But the second weird point kind of invalidates the first, and it's the ventilation weirdness. Okay, so two related things here. Now, a lot of people in comments, I've seen them ask, can you vent it while it's drying? I think these people must have seen the same Lost in Tech video that I've seen. So you can vent it while you're drying. The same little holes that you can use to put PTFE tubes in to print while it dries, you can just open them up while it's drying, and that lets the moist air escape and brings in fresh, dry air that improves the drying performance, as Lost in Tech found in their really good video. And this is what Chitu would recommend, so I've seen them comment this in one of their videos. But actually, when I first started drying with this, I didn't do that, and things were perfectly dry. Like, I've had no issue. Even after a print is done, the humidity inside the chamber is well below ambient, which is kind of magic. I'm not sure how they do that. It's partly due to having desiccant in there, and it comes with it. That's a nice little touch. But okay, it dries even if you don't vent this, so why might that be? I have a theory that the interface between the base unit that does the drying and the modular boxes, it's not perfectly airtight. And that's fine, they're both bits of plastic, there might be small gaps between them, so a little bit of venting happens anyway. So if you're worried about venting, don't be. It dries perfectly well without venting because there's a little bit of air anyway. But actually, if you think about this, this might be a problem, because I found that if I let it finish and then I leave it as it is, okay, I plug the PTFE tubes, the moisture inside creeps up over time relatively quickly, over a couple of days. But if you cover the holes on the bottom, then it stays dry really long, like a week, multiple weeks. So I hope that makes sense together and why it's all part of like the venting thing. You will get some natural venting just from the interface between the base and the dry box, but that means that you have to be careful to cover them after you finish your drying job. And this brings me on to a really nice design choice, which is how these gaps underneath are handled. So underneath the box, there are these metallic plates that magnetize into place. And when you're not using them to plug those holes, they magnetize to the bottom of the storage box somewhere else where they keep the holes open. And it's really easy. You can even like hold the box with one hand, use the other hand to move these where they need to be. And so it's not a pain to do this, but you do have to, I think. I would really recommend when you're finished drying, closing those holes to keep them dry as long as possible. Okay, let's get into the noise levels, because I saw a comment about this and no one's answered it yet. So I've done a lot of testing with my Apple Watch as a decibel meter. So as a background, this room has 2 computers and a NAS. Sometimes the printer is printing. It wasn't for these tests. Sometimes I have a desk fan, but that wasn't on for these tests. So the baseline is the 2 computers and a NAS, which are like 1 meter, 2 meters away. So the room at baseline is between 40 and 44 decibels. When I moved closer to the computer, the background noise level of the room was 44 to 47 decibels, so slightly higher than sitting here, which makes perfect sense. Then I tested this with 1 chamber and 2 chambers with silent mode and normal mode. So 1 chamber in normal mode is 57 to 60 decibels, but dual chambers in normal mode were 56 to 60 decibels. So weirdly, the measurements were the same, they overlapped, but they sounded louder. I don't know how that works. The important thing is, like, I think the loudest thing is the first one. Once you have the first one running, the second one makes a negligible difference, at least in the readings. Now, silent mode was weird. So it did lower the decibel readings. 1 chamber with silent mode becomes 55 to 56 decibels. So it's down a few decibels. And then 2 chambers silent mode was weirdly quieter than 1 chamber silent mode. It was 51 to 54 decibels. It does do the job in lowering the decibel numbers, but who cares about decibel numbers? It sounds more annoying. It's a higher pitch, like shrieking sound with silent mode. So if you're going to be near it, I would never use silent mode. I don't see a reason for silent mode, especially because it might harm the drying performance. So what's the final verdict? Well, even just as a filament storage solution, it's so capable that as a whole package, it becomes a no-brainer, and I would really recommend it to anyone looking at it. It dries your filament. You can dry multiple at the same time. It stores it later and it keeps it dry for a really long time. You can print from it most materials. It's a good price. It looks good. You can stack these on top of each other. So if you can live with the quirks that I've mentioned earlier, then I would wholeheartedly recommend it. And it has earned a permanent place as part of my 3D printing setup. Future me, because I forgot to record this longer disclosure. So I'm sorry if this doesn't quite fit into the video very nicely, but I think it's important. So about 2 months ago, I sent an email to Chitu Systems asking if they would send me one of their E1 filament dryers to review on the channel. They're the only people that I reached out to because this is the dryer that I wanted because of all the features that I mentioned in the video. They didn't reply. There was this great sale on Amazon, so I bought it at a significant discount and I was very happy with it. After I was using it for almost a month, they ended up replying saying, "Oh yeah, we'd love to give you it for free." And I was like, oh no, I just spent my money on this. And then I had 2 routes I could go down. It was still in Amazon's like return window. I could have returned it, got all of my money back, got it from them and reviewed it for free. But I really liked the idea of being able to do an unsponsored video. So I rejected that offer and I kept the thing that I paid for. If you appreciate that kind of review, then I am really grateful for every Patreon and every channel membership. That makes it possible to do these kinds of unbiased, unsponsored reviews. Okay, but I didn't want to let this opportunity go to waste. I said to them, okay, I'm working on this video already. I appreciate the offer, but I already have the dryer. I asked if they would send me the modular expansion boxes so that I can showcase that thing and so I can store more of my filament. And I asked for some of their filament as well. And they initially said yes. They were like, yeah, we'll send you some boxes and filament, that's fine. I stated my terms, which is that most review products I expect to keep, but I keep full editorial control of the video. They said, yeah, that's fine, whatever. We were gonna organize shipping. Then they said the boxes were out of stock, so they weren't able to send the boxes, but they were able to send some Conjure filament. I've unboxed it, I've had a look at it, it's quite cool. There's Galaxy, which I've wanted to try. I don't have any Galaxy before, but I haven't printed with it. And I haven't received these boxes, and I'm not sure if I will receive them. I would love it if they still sent me those boxes, but I'm not expecting that, and I've filmed this video to the best of my ability as if I had bought this product, because I have, and I've bought everything else in this video and all of the filament. As I say, I think openness and disclosure is very important. In my day-to-day job, I'm working in academia, in science, so these kind of disclosures are very important. And unfortunately, they are often missing or very blasé when they should be taken quite seriously, I think. If you like this, I think you'd like this video where I talk about the failed carbon fiber print and how I was able to save it using AI, but not before nearly wrecking my printer. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see my journey of the little printed object that I hinted at earlier in the video. That design is ready, so I hope to put that video out very soon.